The CEO of Kia here in Australia has made some comments that have ruffled a few feathers. A lot of people are getting worked up about this. Some Australians who hate China are getting really angry. They're getting really worried. They're starting to freak out. Apparently, they're going out and just raging. That's what I've heard. Don't know if it's true, but to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised. Why they're getting so angry? Well, the boss of Kia, the CEO, made some comments about the Australian automotive market. But more his point was this: China is taking over. There is nothing you can do about it. This is what is going to happen to the Australian car market. Now, I've been making these comments for a while, and the boss of Kia, he gave me a call and he said, Viking, I know you've been saying this. Do you mind if I say something similar to what you've been saying? And no, that didn't really happen. But anyway, hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. Great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. And I have to say, I think Kia's boss is right. Very astute of him to make these comments. And you've got to say, sunk cost bias, generally, there's lots of biases that would make you not want to make this statement, make you want to believe something else is true. Kudos to Kia for really recognizing what is really going on. This is not just about Australia, my friends. This is a comment that is really a reference to everywhere except North America, everywhere except places where protectionism is in place. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not referencing protectionism in North America as a bad thing. You know, since I started this channel, I've been advocating for it because we have to do crazy things. In desperate times, desperate measures are needed. Kia, Australia's boss, says that Chinese car brands will be in the top 5 within 3 years. Now, he didn't say a Chinese car brand. You know, he could have said a Chinese car brand. He could maybe referencing, say, BYD or MG or LDV or whoever. He didn't say that. He said Chinese car brands will be in the top 5 within 3 years. And you know what? That's happening now. Chinese vehicle sales in Australia are skyrocketing. Not just in Australia, elsewhere as well. But it's a really good example here of what will happen across many places worldwide, many countries worldwide, many population centers worldwide. China is now the 3rd biggest source of vehicles in Australia, and it will become the 2nd pretty soon, likely, after overtaking South Korea in June, where, of course, Kia is from, as it's rocketing up the sales charts in Australia. Now, 5 years ago, Chinese cars represented less than 1% of sales. 5 years ago, less than 1%. In other words, basically nothing. This has been a drastic disruption. Very fast. A Chinese car brand will be among, or brands will be among the top 5 sellers locally within the next 2 years, says Kia Australia. The highest monthly result any Chinese brand has recorded in Australia so far was when MG ranked 5th in December last year and 7th for the full calendar year. However, it's worth pointing out the fact that, where do all of our Tesla vehicles come from? They come from China. Now, yeah, Tesla's obviously not a Chinese car brand, but they are vehicles being made in China. So you're basically supporting Chinese industry if you buy a Tesla. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think you should, because it's the best. They make the best EVs, especially now with the new Highland version coming, the new Juniper cars. That's what I would recommend you buy if you're going to buy an EV. But the point remains. Industry analysts believe it is only a matter of time before MG will be joined inside the top 10 by other fast-growing car brands like Great Wall Motors, with Aura, the EV brand, as well. Obviously, Great Wall Motors is starting to increase their sales in addition to that. They also have the LDV brand. So we've got quite a few car brands here in Australia which are Chinese, and one of them's MG. Most people in Australia don't know that MG is actually a Chinese car brand, not a British car brand. So don't get me wrong, I'm not just picking on you Europeans and Brits for thinking MGs. That is British. It's also a lot of Australians that don't know this as well. Plus, we've got lots of other brands. We've got BYD, of course. Then we've got others like Chery, who plan on a sales expansion here. They've got EVs coming to the Australian car market, which will be compelling. So, of course, you've got quite a number of manufacturers here in Australia that are selling their vehicles cheaper, significantly cheaper, than, say, Japanese or European car makers. And of course, we have very little coming from the US because General Motors pulled out. We really only have Ford here in Australia. The latest data shows the sales of cars from China in the first 7 months of the year, 111,705, have eclipsed the tally for the entire 2022 calendar year, which was 122,845. Basically, the sales of Chinese vehicles in Australia have almost doubled in the space of 12 months. August 2023 sales figures are expected to show China will have delivered more new cars to Australia in the first 8 months of this year than it did in 12 months last year. But we're right on the precipice now with BYD, MG, Aura, etc., about to have a sales explosion because they are about to start selling a plethora of very, very affordable electric cars in Australia. And they're the fastest growing segment of cars here. I mean, think about it, right? EV sales this year are nearly around about 8% in Australia. They were 3% last year. That's a very, very fast growing segment. So this has been an unprecedented and staggering rise in sales. 5 years ago, Chinese cars accounted for just under 1% of all new vehicle sales in Australia. This year, they represent around 17%. 1% to 17% in 5 years. That's what I call disruption. And that's an incredible growth rate. Will they continue growing at that speed? No, it's not possible. But even if they grow at half that speed, then it's inevitable that what Kia's boss is saying is correct. And I don't think he necessarily wants this to happen. He's just pointing out the obvious of what is happening. This means China is now the third biggest source of motor vehicles in Australia, behind Japan and Thailand, overtaking South Korea in June and July. So the Kia executive was asked if brands Kia and Hyundai feel threatened by Chinese car makers, in particular in Australia. That was what the question was about. He said, "We look at all competitors. We respect all competitors. Then we get back in our bubble and go and do what we know how to do best." Now, that's a pretty good response. I mean, what the hell can he do? He's just the CEO here in Australia. He's not like he's making any global purchasing decisions. The truth is, Kia just have to suck it up, and they've got to get what they get. They don't get many Kia EV6s, which is a great car. It's expensive, but it's a very, very good EV. They don't get many, so they can't really sell that many of them. And the truth is here that the Kia product line and Hyundai's product line, they don't have any affordable electric cars to compete with this Chinese explosion, which is about to hit Australia, and it's about to really have, I think, the kind of impact that no one realizes will happen. It's going to absolutely explode. If you put together Tesla's new versions of their EVs, the Chinese invasion of all these different brands, I think there's going to be a very big change in the Australian automotive segment, because we're also going to get electric utes and pickup trucks. But where are they going to come from? Not from Japan, not from South Korea. They'll only be coming really from China. Now, they do have one advantage, though, that I think the Chinese car companies are lacking in significantly. Kia said, "We focus heavily on other areas of the business, such as how we're looking after the customer, how we're looking after the dealer network, the customers' trust in us as a brand." And I agree, Kia definitely does have a pretty good name for covering those things off. Not perfectly, but pretty well, and definitely better than all of those Chinese manufacturers that I mentioned. They have a long way to go in those areas. Let's face the facts, that's simply a reality. My experience with this, that has been the case. I think the experience of anyone who's non-biased and doesn't have some kind of skin in the game here, where they've bought a product and they're really committed to it emotionally, I think everyone would say the same thing. The Chinese brands have a fair way to go when it comes to stuff like warranty issues, fixing those on time, not arguing about them. Things like customer service, getting back to customers, they can improve there. They will improve there, but that's one area that Kia has as an advantage. That's one area where Ford and probably most automakers that are not from China do still have an advantage. Now, is that always the case? Of course not. There's isolated instances where dealers here and there are great, others are bad. So I'm not talking about anecdotal cases where you might have bought a car and thought, no, I bought an MG from here, it was fantastic. I'm talking about as an industry, as an average. So what does this mean? Chinese cars account for more than 10% of the new motor vehicle sales in Australia in 2022, but this year it's likely to hit 20%. Cars from China overtook those from Germany and the USA 2 years ago. Last year, China ranked 4th as a source country. This year, it's 3rd. Next year, it'll likely be 2nd after it overtakes Thailand. However, the interesting thing is here, it's actually the companies that are sort of Western but are in China that are doing the best. Chinese automakers MG, Great Wall Motors, Haval, and LDV have made big inroads into the Australian new car market in the last few years. But the new car sales tally by country of origin also includes Chinese manufactured Tesla, BYD, and Polestar, who are growing at the fastest pace. MG, which is now owned by Shanghai Automotive Industry, which is SAIC, or MG is owned by the Chinese government and by Alibaba. They reported just under 50,000 new vehicle sales as sold in Australia in 2022. That's more than triple their tally in Australia only 3 years ago. And it means that this Chinese company outsold Hyundai and Mitsubishi to rank 5th outright in December's vehicle sales race. In addition, it finished the year in 7th place ahead of Isuzu, Subaru, and Volkswagen, which are typically car manufacturers that do very, very well in Australia. I mean, realistically, the ultimate reality here is that I believe Chinese car makers will disrupt Korean car manufacturers and Japanese the most. Now, the Americans, and they've already been disrupted significantly. Germany, they have the prestige market pretty well sewn up. And then, of course, you've got entrants like Tesla that are kind of trying to eat into that a little bit. However, the more affordable and the medium price car market, that is up for grabs. And I think that's what China is going to go after and take a very large percentage of. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.